praise God, the Almighty King. You ever get really frustrated in life, huh? You ever have those moments where you're extremely frustrated and very irritated? Sometimes those moments last a short while. Let's just say you're trying to cycle through a set of keys to find the right one to open a lock, but you just can't seem to find it. So you start getting frustrated. You might even say a curse word or something, but eventually you find the key and you unlock it and everything's okay. And as you live through those experiences more and more, you learn, or at least maybe you should learn, how to handle your emotions when things aren't going exactly the way you expect them to go. And there are things that happen in life that are frustrating over a longer period of time. When you're cycling through keys to find the right one, that takes a few minutes. But when you are faced with a bigger challenge that takes days, weeks, months, even years, you sort of settle into a type of frustration and a type of irritation that may not be as intense as the short-lived irritating moments such as cycling through keys, but it's like the irritation and the aggravation takes on a different kind of form, and those are the ones that I think most of us deal with. I mean, look at the frustration with life itself. Just having to be here and not having all the answers, and things not going your way all the time. So it's a sense of frustration and irritation that happens your whole life. So how do you contend with that? How do you contend with the fact that I'm symbolically will be cycling through keys my entire life and may not find that right key that unlocks that specific lock, whatever that may be. It's all symbolic at this point. It's all metaphorical, symbolic, and so on. So how do you manage that properly? Well, there's a couple ways, it seems like. Let's just say you're somebody who doesn't know God. So how do you handle it? How do you deal with it? I don't know. People who don't know God, don't have God in their lives, don't have a relationship with God. Maybe they just have a relationship with just nature. Maybe they just have a relationship with just dealing with things the way they are. Maybe people are fine with the level of entropy that they're currently at. There are these standards we all have for ourselves. Everybody has their own standard, their own way, their own specific way of how they go through life. Some people have very high standards, some have low standards, and then of course there are standards that go in all different directions. A homeless bum living under a bridge doing drugs every day, that's the standard by which they live by. Their frustration will be, I didn't have the amount of crack I'm used to this week, and that's frustrating for me. A very successful businessman or woman might get irritated and frustrated one month when they don't make their $1 million quota. Imagine the frustration the CEO of Apple faces on a day-to-day basis versus the crackhead who lives under the bridge. They're both dealing with their frustrations. And so we have all different kinds of frustrations, all different kinds of standards. And, Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, he might be an atheist. So who does he give his frustrations to? What calms this man's mind? And there's no doubt that a lot of these standards are set for us at a young age. Some say it's all set before the age of 7. Like your expectations, your environment, your culture, how you grew up, it's all imprinted within the subconscious of your mind. It's imprinted in your DNA, imprinted on your soul, for those of us who have a soul. And so we carry on. And I'll leave this thought with this. I recently watched a video, The Bible Project. If you have any interest, go to the YouTube channel, The Bible Project. They do an absolutely amazing job explaining the books of the Bible, as well as their animations that go along with it. I mean, they're so fantastic, and I believe that these people who created this project and who work on it have a very fantastic grasp of the story of the Bible. Jesus Christ, God the Almighty, they get it. They're very, very good at explaining it, and I believe their interpretations are pretty spot on. The most recent one that they did that I watched was on the book of Job, and Ecclesiastes and Proverbs, and how each one has a different kind of take on it. Like, for example, Proverbs is about wisdom, and Ecclesiastes has more of a critic approach to it. But that in the book of Ecclesiastes, there's a approach that has a view of the world of everything is sort of a waste of time. Like, there's nothing new under the sun. Everything is just vanity and grasping for the wind, and it's a very almost like a nihilistic approach to looking at the world. And made me think about how we essentially fall into our standards, our way of living life. Every single one of us has our specific way about going about life. Some people are fine with just having a middle-class lifestyle, have a couple kids, raise a family and do the family thing and everything that entails, the daily responsibilities, the schedule, the taking your kids to school. I mean, people fall into that lifestyle and they're okay with it, even though, let's just say, the wife of of a family is maybe internally she's extremely unhappy, but she keeps carrying on because her subconscious, not to mention her biological needs, pretty much dictate her life. And there's no doubt that we have these moments where we think, oh, if only things were different. I wonder if I would have done things differently, how my life would have ended up. And we can definitely get a sense of this when we think about our parents. Like, sometimes I think about my mother and I say to myself, what if my mom didn't get pregnant at 21 with her first child? I mean, what a baby, right? What a young girl. See, I grew up my whole life knowing my mother as my mother. She always will be the mother figure in my life. And I to her will always be just her son. But I remember there was a moment where in my life I had this interesting bit of clarity, like a different like psychological shift. It was very odd. And I was able to see my mother and my father differently. I saw them as just human beings outside of their parental roles to me. I saw them as just regular people, almost like strangers And see, these are people who at one point in their life had their aspirations. They had their dreams. They had their ideas of what they wanted to be. And of course, somebody like my mother gets broadsided for having kids at such a young age, and then having to become a mother, and of course relinquishing her dreams of being a journalist or whatever it was that she wanted to be. There was a couple things: a traveler, a journalist, and so on. But isn't that the desire of most young girls anyway? To be something big? And isn't that the desire of most young boys anyway? Just to be something big and conquer the world. But then life kind of bats you around, and you end up living a pretty different life than what you'd hoped for. But biology and the world and nature, and it all dictates that for us, for some of us. And in the book of Ecclesiastes, the critic talks about these things, like everything's just kind of a waste of time. There's nothing new. There's nothing different than the animal and the human being. We all die. We all go through our struggles. We all do the same thing. It doesn't matter what you did. Everything will be forgotten, no matter your achievements and so on. It all eventually just gets forgotten in history, and the cycle continues. And that's the critic's approach. And I found it interesting that the critic doesn't mention how he interprets deep focus, how he doesn't talk about how people have the ability to solve an urgent problem. And then the key word there is urgency. You see, urgency is a powerful thing. It's extremely powerful to create urgency. Urgency itself is powerful. When a tornado rips the roof off of your house and continues on, the urgency is to find a new place or rebuild it. There's an extreme sense of urgency. Urgency comes when our status quo is broadsided, is derailed. And what's interesting and even kind of scary is that because of our individual standards that we set for ourselves, because of that, urgency only comes by way of derailing us from our standards, aside from the basic needs that we have: food, shelter, things of that nature. But our standards for ourselves. But what's even where it gets scary is that we have the ability to create urgency for ourselves. And if you are somebody who looks back at, let's just say, the last 10 years of your life and says, gosh, I haven't done anything. How come I'm living the same life year after year after year? And the same year over and over and over again. And you see, but we don't like urgency, and we especially don't like to create it for ourselves because it puts us in a state of uncertainty, because we love our certainty. We love the known. We love predictability. We love it so much. This is why they come out with the same movie every single month, even though the skin of the movie changes, but the structure remains the same. We actually watch the same movie over and over and over again, even if we don't think we believe that to be true. It is true. Every story is exactly the same. Don't believe me? Go read Save the Cat. Go read Save the Cat, and you'll see how. Some things structurally are just moved around, but essentially they're all there. Now, we can create urgency for ourselves. We can do that. I've done it. But the problem is we have to fight the law of entropy, even if that's even a law. If you were to take a giant sack of marbles and you were to throw them down let's just say a flight of stairs, or just throw them out in the street, or just throw them off the top of a building, whatever. You see, all the marbles will eventually come to a stop. They'll stop somewhere. They'll find a landing place. Just like people, you come into the world, you're in this state of momentum. You're growing. Everything's new. Everything's changing. Everything's, the whole world's new to you. But eventually, you will find your resting place. And that is dictated by your culture, by the standards you grew up in, by the household. And that's it. And so if you're frustrated, if you're irritated, if you expect more from yourself, you have to learn how to create the urgency, especially if you want the results to happen faster. Some people say, I got to be patient. Some people wait 20, 30 years to do anything. Some people do nothing their entire lives, even though every day they hope for some kind of change to happen, but it never arrives. And that's a sense of urgency that you can create for yourself, is to say, you know what? I could sit here and go through my routine day by day, year by year, and 50 years will go by and I'll be dead and nothing will fundamentally change. That is a fact. Nothing will come and now some things might happen by chance. You might meet somebody and something might happen, but those don't happen that often. You can say, I got lucky. Somebody who's walking through a store and they get approached by, let's just say, a person who runs a hospital and says, hey, you look like you'd be good at being a surgeon. And the person says, what are you talking about? And it's like, oh, let me help you out here. And for whatever reason, that might be a bad example, but for whatever reason, some people just fall into these fortuitous circumstances that are merely chance. And do you want your life to be a life of chance, the outcome of your life, chance? Or do you want to have more control? But in order to have control, you have to take action. You have to think bigger. You have to do bigger. You have to take action. But you have to create for yourself urgency. So how do you create the urgency? Well, one good way to do it is to do it by fear. Fear that something will not happen unless if you do something right now. Not tomorrow, not a year from now, not when you get your benefits from your job. None of the safe crap. You have to create a sense of urgency. And sometimes that means we just have to get rid of stuff that hold us down. God is God, the Almighty King. Let's see what happens. Praise the Lord.